The message arrived at exactly 11:47 p.m., just as I was shutting down my laptop after another exhausting workday. My phone buzzed once, and I smiled, expecting a text from my wife. Instead, I saw my best friend Ryan's name. My smile disappeared the moment I opened it. "Your wife is cheating on you." My heartbeat instantly doubled. Before I could even process those words, another message appeared. "She's in my house, sleeping with me right now." My hands froze. My mind screamed that it had to be some twisted joke. But Ryan never joked like this. At least, not until tonight. For almost 10 years, Ryan had been more than a friend. We survived college together, celebrated promotions together, and even stood beside each other at our weddings. I trusted him with everything, including the spare key to my house. My wife, Emily, always treated him like family, laughing at his terrible jokes and inviting him over for holidays. There had never been a reason to doubt either of them. Yet those 2 text messages shattered every memory I thought I could trust. I stared at the screen, wondering whether my entire marriage had been built on lies. I called Emily immediately. The call rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. I tried again. The same result. My chest tightened. Ryan wasn't answering his phone either. Every unanswered call made those messages feel more real. My imagination became my worst enemy, creating scenes I desperately wished weren't true. I grabbed my car keys without another thought and rushed outside into the cold night. Rain had started falling, making the empty streets blur beneath the headlights. Every red traffic light felt like it was mocking my desperation. Something terrible was waiting for me, and I could already feel it. Ryan lived only 20 minutes away, but that drive felt endless. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Halfway there, another message appeared. This time it was only a photo of Ryan's living room. On the coffee table sat the anniversary candle Emily had bought for our home just 2 weeks earlier. I knew that candle better than my own reflection because we'd chosen it together. My stomach dropped. That wasn't something Ryan could have faked. Somehow, something from my house had ended up inside his. I parked quietly across the street instead of pulling into Ryan's driveway. His living room lights glowed behind partially closed curtains. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear inside my ears. Every instinct told me to burst through the front door and demand answers. But another part of me whispered that emotions destroy evidence. I pulled out my phone and activated its camera before stepping closer. As I reached the porch, I heard voices inside. One sounded like Ryan. The other sounded frighteningly familiar. My entire body stiffened as the conversation suddenly stopped. Before I could knock, the front door slowly opened. Ryan stood there alone. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look guilty. Instead, he looked strangely calm, almost as if he'd been expecting me all along. "You're finally here," he said quietly. I shoved past him and searched every room downstairs. The living room was empty. The kitchen was silent. The guest room was untouched. There was no sign of Emily anywhere. Furious, I turned toward Ryan, demanding to know where she was. He looked directly into my eyes and said something that made everything even more confusing. "I never said she was still here," Ryan replied before handing me his phone. "Before you lose control, you need to watch this." My anger almost made me throw the device across the room, but curiosity won. A video began playing. It showed Emily entering Ryan's house earlier that evening, but she wasn't smiling. She looked frightened. Then the recording suddenly cut off just as another man stepped into the frame. My breathing stopped. That man wasn't Ryan. It was someone I recognized immediately, someone neither of us had expected to see. And in that moment, I realized the text messages were only the beginning of a far bigger betrayal. Ryan's hands trembled slightly as he paused the video. "I knew you wouldn't believe a phone call," he said quietly. "That's why I sent those messages. I needed you here before it was too late." My mind was spinning between anger and confusion. Then he played another recording from a security camera facing his driveway. Emily had arrived alone, looking terrified rather than excited. Minutes later, a black SUV stopped outside. The man who stepped out wasn't a stranger at all. It was my former business partner, Daniel. The The same man I'd fired 6 months earlier after discovering he had stolen thousands of dollars from our company. Suddenly, everything started falling into place. Ryan explained that Emily had contacted him earlier that evening, asking for help. Daniel had been threatening her for weeks after learning she knew the truth about his financial crimes. She had agreed to meet him only because he claimed he would leave us alone forever if she returned some documents he believed she possessed. Instead of meeting Daniel alone, she secretly asked Ryan to let her use his house because she thought it was the safest place. Ryan had immediately started recording everything with his home security system, expecting Daniel to expose himself. None of us realized how dangerous the situation would become. The video continued. Daniel stormed into the living room, furious that Emily didn't have the documents he wanted. His voice echoed through the speakers as he demanded she tell him where I had hidden the company records. Emily stood her ground, refusing to betray me despite the fear visible on her face. Ryan had stayed hidden upstairs while quietly calling the police. When Daniel realized officers might be on the way, he fled through the back door just seconds before the sirens arrived. Emily had already been escorted safely to the police station to give her statement before I ever reached Ryan's house. I felt the weight of shame crash over me. Only minutes earlier, I had believed the worst about the two people who had cared about me for years. Ryan looked exhausted rather than victorious. I knew if I simply texted, "Emily needs help. You might not get here fast enough," he admitted. So I wrote something I knew would make you leave everything behind. I wanted to be furious at his cruel method, yet I couldn't deny it had worked exactly as he intended. Without those shocking words, I might have ignored my phone until morning, giving Daniel time to disappear forever. We drove straight to the police station together. The moment Emily saw me, tears filled her eyes. Before she could speak, I wrapped my arms around her. She apologized for keeping Daniel's threat secret, explaining that she had wanted to protect me from more stress after everything we'd already endured. Detective Harris entered the room carrying a folder thick with evidence recovered from Ryan's cameras and Daniel's abandoned vehicle. Combined with the financial records I had saved months earlier, the investigation was finally strong enough to bring criminal charges against Daniel. The nightmare that had haunted us for months was finally beginning to end. Several weeks later, Daniel accepted a plea agreement rather than face a lengthy trial. His attempt to silence witnesses had only strengthened the case against him. Ryan's recordings proved invaluable, and Emily's courage became the deciding factor that exposed his entire scheme. Although justice had been served, repairing trust inside our own lives took much longer. Emily and I began communicating more honestly than ever before, promising never again to hide fear behind silence. Ryan remained my closest friend, though we often laughed awkwardly about the most shocking text message ever sent between two lifelong friends. Looking back now, I still remember the panic I felt when those words first appeared on my phone. For a few terrifying minutes, I believed my marriage and my friendship had collapsed in the same instant. Instead, that unforgettable message became the first step toward exposing a far deeper betrayal, one that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with greed, revenge, and manipulation. I learned that a single message can completely change the direction of a person's life, but the full truth rarely arrives in the first sentence. Sometimes the most unbelievable text hides the most unexpected act of loyalty.